Hey, welcome back. Go ahead and dim the lights, get comfortable, maybe pull the blanket up a little higher. I've got 3 stories for you tonight, pulled from the strange and shadowed corners of history. The first is a disappearance nobody could explain, the second a night a whole village tried to forget, and the last one, honestly, is the kind of thing that still makes the hair stand up on my arms. Settle in. I was the second mate on that relief boat, and I have never in my life felt a place so wrong the moment my boots touched the landing. The Aldmarsh light stood on a bare grey rock 2 miles off the coast. No beach, no soil, just stone and iron, and the sea chewing at it day and night. 3 men lived there in shifts of 2 months. Their names were Hallery, Prewitt, and Young Dunn, and they were good, steady men who had done that dark work for years without complaint. We had come because the light had gone dark for 2 nights running, and dark meant trouble. But when we arrived, it was burning bright as a coin. That was the first thing that made my stomach turn. If the lamp worked, why had it gone out? And if it had gone out, who lit it again? Inside, the logbook lay open on the table. The last entry was in Hallery's careful hand, dated 9 days earlier. It read simply, "The storm is inside the walls now. God forgive us." And beneath it, in a hand I did not recognize, a single line. "It wants the 3rd man." Nothing more. The stove was warm to the touch, though no fire had been fed in over a week. A plate of salt beef sat half-eaten. 2 oilskin coats hung on their pegs. The 3rd peg was empty. We searched every inch of that rock. The lantern room, the store, the little chapel niche where Prewitt kept his prayer book. We found Prewitt's boots set neatly at the top of the outside stairs. Laces still tied, pointed toward the edge as though he had walked straight off into the black water without stepping out of them. We found Dunn's spectacles folded on the gallery rail. We found no bodies, no blood, no sign of a fight. The 3-man crew always kept 1 man ashore in emergency, but the coast station swore no man had come in. Here is the part that has followed me 40 years. The great clock that governed the lamp had stopped. Not run down, mind you, wound tight and stopped, its hands frozen at 3 minutes past 2. And every timepiece on that rock had stopped at exactly the same moment. Hallery's pocket watch, the kitchen clock, even the tide table someone had scratched into the wall in charcoal ended in the middle of a number, as if the man's hand had simply lifted away. The inquiry ruled it a freak wave. A rogue sea, they said, sweeping all 3 men off the gallery at once. But I stood on that gallery, and it sat 60 feet above the highest water ever recorded there. No wave in living memory had climbed half so far, and a wave does not untie a man from his boots. A wave does not fold a man's spectacles. A wave does not light a lamp 9 days after the last hand that could reach it was gone. We took the light ourselves that season, 4 of us, and we barred the door and burned the lamp in shifts and slept 2 to a bed with a hatchet between us. And on the 9th night, at 3 minutes past 2, my watch stopped. Just stopped. I held it to my ear and heard nothing. And then I heard very faint, from somewhere below the floor, where there was nothing but solid rock and sea, a sound like a man politely clearing his throat, the way Hallery used to before he spoke. I wound my watch. It did not start. I threw it into the sea, and I never went back to Aldmarsh, and neither did any man I could warn away. The light burns automatic now, no keepers at all. Sometimes I wonder if that was the point, if the sea was simply tired of asking, and took the last 3 men who would ever answer. I was a physician's apprentice then, 17 years old, and I have spent every year since trying to understand what my eyes refused to believe. It began with the miller's wife, Agnetha. She stepped out of her door onto the market square, and she began to move her feet. Not a jig, not a merry thing. Her face was slack with terror even as her body danced. Her arms flung about, her heels striking the cobbles until the stones ran red beneath them. She did not stop for water. She did not stop for prayer. She screamed that she wished to stop and her legs would not obey her. By the 2nd day there were 30 of them. By the 4th, 100. They danced in the square and down the lanes, old men and nursing mothers and children, their eyes rolling, foam at the corners of their mouths, and still their feet moved and moved and moved. My master bled them, he prayed over them, He tied one man to a cart to force him to rest, and the man thrashed against the ropes with such violence that we heard his arm break, and still he danced against the bindings until his heart burst. The town council, God help their foolish reasoning, decided the only cure was to let them dance it out of their bodies. They hired musicians. They built a wooden stage. They believed the sickness would tire itself if only it had music to spend itself upon. I will hear that music in the last moment of my life, I am sure of it. The pipes and the tabors playing over the corpses of neighbors who had fallen and been trampled by the ones still moving. We buried 40 souls in 3 weeks. Some simply stopped, dropped where they stood, and slept for a day and woke with no memory of the dancing at all, only aching feet and bewilderment at the graves. Others died of the heat, of ruptured hearts, of exhaustion so complete that the body forgot how to breathe. The priest said it was a curse sent by a saint whose feast we had neglected. The physicians who came from the city said it was a fever of the blood. No one truly knew, no one ever truly knew. Here is what I have never told a living soul. In the days before the dancing, our village had been starving. The rye harvest of the year before had been poor and wet, and we had eaten the grain anyway, ground into bread that tasted faintly bitter and looked speckled dark. I remember my master holding up a loaf to the light and frowning at the black threads growing through it. And I remember him saying, we could not afford to be delicate, so we ate the bad bread. All of us. Every household in the village, every household, that is, but 3. The tanner's family, who were too poor even for bad bread and lived on turnips. The old widow at the wood's edge, who baked her own from clean stores she had hidden. And my master's house, where I lived, for he had bought good flour from the city on the last of his savings, calling it an indulgence he would repent of later. Not one soul from those 3 houses danced. Not one. I did not understand it then. I understood it many years later, an old man myself, when I read of a mold that grows on wet rye, a black rot that turns the mind to fire and the body to a puppet with cut strings. And I thought of the loaves held up to the light, the dark threads, the frown on my master's face. We had eaten our own madness. We had baked it and salted it and fed it to our children. The council never wrote that down. In the records it says only that the townsfolk were seized by the dancing plague, cause unknown, remedy none, and so the truth was buried with the 40 under the churchyard grass, where no one would think to dig for something so simple and so terrible as bread. His name was Orsino Valdi, and I served as his engraver for the last decade of his strange life, so I can tell you what the historians cannot. Orsino was the most sought-after cartographer in the whole of the Republic. Merchant princes waited months for his work. His maps of the known seas were flawless, every reef and shoal exact. But it was the other maps that made him a legend, the ones he drew of the far southern waters that no Venetian ship had ever reached. He drew a coastline down there, a great curving shore he called the Silver Margin, with harbors and river mouths and a chain of islands he named for the days of the week. And he swore to any captain bold enough to buy the chart that if they sailed the exact course he plotted, they would find safe water and fair winds the whole way. The thing is, they did. That is what I could never explain. The first captain who bought it, a hard man named Coppo, came back after 14 months with his holds full of spices no one in Venice had names for, and he wept when he saw Orsino and kissed his hands and said every island was where the map promised. Every harbor, every safe anchorage in a sea no European had ever charted. More captains came, more returned rich. A few never returned at all. But the sea takes ships in charted waters too, and no one blamed the maps. Orsino grew wealthy and quiet and stranger with each passing year. He never left Venice. He had never in his life sailed further than the lagoon. When I asked him, plainly one night over wine, how he could map a shore he had never seen, he looked at me for a long while and said, "I do not map what is there. I map what will be there when they arrive." I took it for the riddling of a proud old man. But I began to notice things. He drew the maps in a fever, always at night, always beginning with the empty ocean and letting his hand wander as if something guided it. And he dated each new chart, not with the day he drew it, but with a day some months in the future, the day, he said, that the ship would reach that particular shore. He died in the winter of his 70th year. I was with him. In his last hour, he gripped my sleeve and told me the truth of it, and I have carried the weight of it ever since. He said there was no southern coast at all before he drew it. He said the sea down there was formless, unmade, waiting, and that a true map drawn with true belief did not record the world, but instructed it. The captains did not find his coastline because it existed. It existed because he had drawn it, and they had believed it hard enough, across 1,000 leagues of faith, to force the empty water into land. I thought his mind had gone. Then he asked me for one last favor. He asked me to burn every plate and every copy of the silver margin charts the moment he was dead. Because, he said, a map can be unmade the same way it was made, and there were 3 ships out on that coastline still, 3 crews walking on harbors he had dreamed, and if the belief that held those shores together should ever fail, the land beneath their feet would remember. It had always been only sea. He died at midnight, and I could not do it. I could not burn a man's life's work on the strength of a dying delusion. I kept the plates. None of those 3 ships ever came home. And when the great atlases of the next century were drawn, the silver margin was gone from every one of them, wiped clean, nothing there but open ocean where a whole coast of islands named for the days of the week had once so surely and so profitably been. Stay with me a while longer if you're still awake, and let me know down in the comments which of the 3 stories crawled under your skin the most.